Okay, welcome to the 101st and Evolving Man podcast with Jay Marshall. Jay is a design engineer who, after working across Formula One, film, sound, and human performance, has been motivated to help stop child exploitation. He is the co-founder of Safe Kids Spaces, a 51% parent-owned community company building AI technologies to secure children's online safety, well-being, and digital sovereignty. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you, Piers. No, thank you for inviting me.
So I'd love for you to just share a little bit about your journey. How have you got into the work you're now doing with Safe Kids Spaces?
Yeah, it's a long journey, and part of the reason that we connected, my journey or our journey, sort of, we when we founded it was really stems from our experience at boarding school, and the fact that that's where sort of we first met as individuals, and our first sort of interaction with child abuse, if you like, being battered about by um, masters, older school kids, and all the rest of it. That's where the sort of stories first started. And then as we went through life, we sort of lost contact because I wasn't at the same school as him. We went to different schools and we just happened to play a sport together. And he sort of helped me out and we sort of got along. Helped me out when I was having a bit of a fracas with another kid, well, kids. And he sort of was one of the kids that sort of like, came on, oi, break it up, come on. But then I moved on from that school, as we talked about just a moment ago, because when I sort of told the folks about what was happening to me at the school, being, knocked about by the masters, they pulled me out, and I went to a local comp. Um, from there, sort of, I had all sorts of weird bumps and along the way, but ended up in motorsports through sort of just going through lots and lots of jobs where really I didn't really know what I was doing. I left school with no education as such, and yeah, really didn't have a sort of career in mind, but got an HGV license, and that allowed me to get into lots of weird little jobs, but through the sort of trucking route. So I went to Aston Martin's was my first job. I got a job driving the truck and welding and repairing bits of bodywork at the track. Um, and that then got my foot in the door, and I was able to sort of like do a bit here and there, and eventually sort of work my way into the drawing office. I'm fortunate and now that I'm old enough that most of the blokes that I knew in F1 during the time I was there, they're either you know they're either now managing it, or they've left and they've gone and done something else completely differently. So we've got a couple of guys on the SKS, which is Safe Kids Spaces, who are in F1, some are in other jobs and moved on to do other things, and they were slowly sort of building a little team that can actually you know generate the ideas quickly, move them along quickly, and develop the product quickly. Which Formula One is famous for doing. So I've waffled on there a bit, but uh, I've arrived here through effectively a set of experiences, not particularly good ones, that have sort of landed us, myself, and a small group of folks in this position there, where now we've come out into the outside world, and we're finding that the systems that were supposed to be taking care of the kids, the reason that we're here, the systems, they're not working, they're not fit for purpose. Neither the schools themselves, the systems that the government that underlie the government that they have to work within. The civil service structure is glacial, along with the political, onboarding system. It's just, I could go on and on. I don't want to, because that's not really why I'm here. The first punt, the first punt is a children's digital sovereignty bill, and we put out a petition. So if you Google children's digital sovereignty bill and petition, you'll come across it. If you can just sign and share that, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll put it into the description
Yeah,
and
that,
then people
that
can
would be
sign that. So
because we
Children's Digital Sovereignty Bill.
yeah, children's digital sovereignty. Because AI is actually, let me get my notes out again because there are a couple of things I've got to talk about, and really AI is one of the major problems that our children, well, we're going to chase, we're going to have to chase anyway because jobs are going to, well, are already being thinned. That they've got all sorts of safety issues already with it. Um, uh, Congress in the States are now being battered by Gladstone to try and drive home some awareness around AI problems. Um, and we've got to effectively meet that head on um, with protection equipment and kit and apps for children, because when it does arrive, there will be lots more cheap and accessible tools for abusers to be able to just bend to their own wool so they can remain anonymous and trick children into doing things that they no one wants them to do. Well, nobody with the right mind.
Mm. Thank you, Jay. Fascinating journey, Formula One, and then going into this work. So, yeah, it's so needed. So, thank you for doing it.
No, no, no worries.
So, I'd love for us to begin, going into this a bit about how are technologies and online companies harmful for children? How are they harming our children? Because some people, you know, I've researched quite a bit into Facebook and other companies, and I've understood, but for people listening, how is it, in your opinion, harming our children?
I mean, thankfully, we don't need opinion now. There's been lots of research from the likes of Jonathan Haidt, Professor Jonathan Haidt from New York. He's just produced The Anxious Generation, and that's backed up with lots of proper peer-reviewed documents around self-harming, the way that has uh, grown with the uptake in smartphones and the internet. So it's not even a question anymore. But the fundamentals that are here and that we worked with, we originally came from the safety aspect, i.e., there's abusers and child groomers getting at kids. Well, how are they doing this? And why are they able to do this? Um, uh, and that involves all the companies who are effectively, and the government, who are more interested in bottom line, i.e., money, power, and actually than children. I'm afraid it's as simple as that. So you've got the anonymous abuser problem from the get-go, which is obviously not acceptable. But you've got just the general underlying system of algorithms that are built purely to understand how you and your children operate so that they can sell you stuff. When our children and we are plugged into AI in a way like an AI chatbot, which you can get quite easily now. I've got on my phone. Um, and they're instrumental in organizing your life for you. It doesn't take much imagination for to imagine somebody sitting outside in their car, hacking into your Wi-Fi, hacking into your devices, and taking control of your AI. And of course your children's AI, and you'd have already seen voice recognition and face recognition, the AI tools that can change those now to whatever you want. Those are only going to get better. And like I say, it doesn't take much of a smart noggin to be able to figure out there could be a paedophile outside in their car, hacking into your Wi-Fi. Oh, hello, change the face, get the picture from mum's Facebook page, get the voice from one call that you had with her, selling her an EE a subscription. You've got the voice. Here, darling, just pop outside, will you? I'm with John. He's got a new car. And before you know it, your kid's away. And that's just one scenario. Never mind that, like I say, the underlying algorithms that are just built just to make money. And I love that old saying, what is it? If you're not paying for it, you are the product. And it just sums up
Mm.
really what's happening. If you aren't really IT savvy, like a lot of parents aren't nowadays, because AI and tech has just rushed down the pipe at us. If you're not super savvy with the security measures that are already available or on the phone and outside, then your children it's got a device that is just raring to go. It wants to be on the internet. Its entire purpose. You know, it's a connecting a connection tool. And our families are walking into this very blindly, a lot of them. And the problem, of course, is getting worse. You can guarantee where there's children, there'll be, people that want to, abuse them. It's just the way of it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I was been listening for the documentary to some footage by Alex Renton. He says there's 180,000 children tonight sleeping in residential care, 50% of which are boarding school. And he says, are they safe? No.
Okay.
And the reason being, he draws back to his cover up, is that if anything happens, and I spoke to a head teacher a couple of years ago on my podcast, he says the duty of care is always to the institution, it's never to the child. And another podcast I did with another lady who's an author about parenting, saying, you know, children are second class citizens in this country. You
Yeah.
know, they're not really, so it's almost like the duty of care needs to be the child, but at the moment it's not, it's always the institution. So
Well, you
I
companies as well, Piers, because the companies are beholden to their shareholders. That's their first responsibility.
exactly. And if you look at the history of the corporate world, I think Nick Duffel talks about this. It's either Will Hutton saying that the British Empire morphed into the corporate world in the 1920s. It's not that the British Empire disappeared. So that meant that those same ways of being emotionally shut down, it being all about the institution, that's
Yeah,
carried on. And I
yeah,
would say that's still prevalent that business, it is about the shareholders, it is about the next quarterly statement rather than in the First Nations, the indigenous tribes, it's the next 7 generations. How will my decision affect the next 7 generations? Not the next 3 months.
yeah. Or the next political cycle, or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, we're trapped at the moment. We're trapped in a system that precipitates this short-term thinking from a government perspective, schools perspective. I mean, obviously the open schools, state schools are within the government system, and they're trapped within that. And I've heard so many teachers just you're just shouting and shaking their heads
Mm,
about the way that the institutions are run. It does beg a belief, that we're still in it. But I'm an optimist by
mhm,
trade. I really believe that if we can meet what they call artificial general intelligence, and it may be worth drawing a distinction between those two for your viewers if they're not into AI. Uh, what they call narrow AI
mhm,
um, is something that's more confined. It has guardrails, more guardrails, and more sort of alignment with just generally what that particular purpose is. So when we talk about narrow AI, it's normally aimed at just one thing, being a chatbot. Looking at videos, making the video more enhanced, changing the face or whatever you want that to do. With AGI, that's effectively, some people talk about it being sentient, like a sentient sort of being, but it really means it can do anything that a normal human could do. So it could get onto your computer and do whatever you would actually do, and it doesn't take much imagination for someone to think, well, if it can do that, all you've got to do is plop that in in one of the General Dynamics robots, and you've got a problem. Is it General Dynamics? I can't remember. You've seen those little dogs running around
mm,
with fire extinguishers and guns on top of their heads.
yeah.
It's not, they're already doing back somersaults and and opening doors. It's not well, in fact, they're already using them in war. They're already using drones and these General Dynamics robots in the wartime situation. It's I tend not to go out to parties anymore because I just end up talking about really depressing things.
Yeah, I think I'm sharing this with a guest a few weeks ago, this idea that we've got to step into, I've done quite a few around the archetypes, the male and female archetypes, and the sovereign is about vision and this idea that we have to have a vision for the future and keep that. And no matter what anyone else says, keep moving towards that.
Yeah,
And you in your area, what you're doing, me with what I'm doing, and so many others. And I feel things like you are. I'm an optimist. I know things will change, and
yeah.
it's that certainty. And yeah, yeah. Uh, by all accounts, it does seem that things are difficult at the moment. So,
The actual problem that we have now is the problem with government and councils and the way that the system trickles down to like your borough councils as well and your local councils, whether that be in a village parish council or a town council, and the chain of command. Again, that system is just broken. It's no other way to. There's no other way to put it. I've been to and we've been helping out the Green Party, or just one Green Party member actually, again to understand and collect data points. But actually, uh, she's a really sort of interesting character who is trying to do good. And then we started looking at, well, actually, who gets driven to these political parties? Why are they being driven? And what's their sort of the ideology for each separate party and again we just found problems everywhere from the perspective of base motivations right the way through to sort of the egotistical sort of layers that you need to adopt to be able to basically stand in front of a camera and lie.
yeah,
Because that's quite a when you know you're in front of a camera and you have, I don't know if you're on the BBC and you've got like 300,000 people, whatever, watching the live debate, and you're prepared to stand there and just lie through your teeth about something, particularly if it has ramifications for whether it be killing children or at the end of a long bombing mission or a drone or whether it be something local, like not um, the ICSA report.
we've spoken about this on the podcast. Do you want to share a little bit about the ICSA?
Yeah, I mean, the ICSA report was just doomed from the beginning. I mean, you probably know about the different people that the report went through at the
Yeah, so if we just kind of take a step back, so the ICSA stands for the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse.
Yes, yeah. Hmm. Sorry, I thought he was going to give me more detail, then I thought I'd grab a quick drink. Um,
Yeah, no, no, no problem. I mean, more detail is it was set
yeah,
up, I think, 2014, 2015. I think it was 187 million pounds which was spent on it, and
a lot
they
of
went through
our money, of course.
our money, and there was quite a lot of chair people who were either fired or resigned because of the way it was being run,
Mainly resignations, yeah.
many
Well,
resignations.
the mainly resignations, and our belief is that the resignations were because when they did invite somebody along, they were either wholly unfit for the job, i.e., they were connected to paedophiles, and I'm not joking. That's in the record, which is like who's just making this decision? Well, actually, it was our prime minister and the people in that chain of command. Well, if these people are making the decisions, then yeah, then they tried to get a couple of folks that were maybe not, connected to somebody who might have abused a child, as ground zero. And then people said, well, what am I actually getting involved in? Well, if I can't, if you're going to stop that report, like the Kincora boys, uh, uh, home in Ireland, if you're going to stop that report, then what other reports aren't we including? And then all of a sudden you end up in a massive mess because it's either connected to an MFI agent or some member of the royal family, and then it's put in the bin. So the ICSA report was tainted from the word go. You know,
Mm.
and no one seemed to either have the brain power or the gumption to actually put their foot down and say, no, this is a really important thing. We need to make sure if we're spending £100 million on something, Can we, can someone please get this right? It's just, where are we? Well, we're not in a good place, obviously, but and this is why we had to start looking at all the systems, because we were just meeting stone walls and roadblocks, when we started to try to just investigate, who's in charge, where's the holistic plan to stop this thing, to stop child abuse, and who's in charge of the holistic plan, and we couldn't get a plain English answer to either of those questions, you know. So we had
Mm.
to go. We had to go. Well, we basically we had to go the way we are going now, which is sort of more little acorns, and start to build a sort of a bit of a movement, a bit of a membership. See who we can get, and this is the what This is one of the reasons we stopped talking actually, because about going everywhere in every direction and losing a tangent. Um, uh, but uh, this is why it's quite important for us to travel through the likes of yourself, your podcast, and thanks again, because you're in this space of therapy, understanding this particular problem of child abuse, and as I mentioned before, we started. We will then go on to Element Crystal's podcast, and we sort of got a line of Element Crystal shout out. Actually, she's in Northamptonshire, really keen. She's done a couple of podcasts already, when she's got her own podcast as well. And she went on me saying she was abused by her father, and the father was reintroduced back into the family while she was going through puberty and teenage years, and that was just massively confusing for her. But she turned it all around. It makes me weep thinking about it. She turned it all around. She's a therapist now, multimodal therapist, beautiful human being. And she's involved with what we're up to as well. But so she's going to be the next podcast, and as I and the sort of like our little team roll along, we'll pick up more and more data points. We'll get better at doing it. We'll understand how the psychotherapy community understand the problem, understand what we're trying to do, and we'll keep on knitting it together as we go along. Well, I
Mm.
should probably plug the website actually whilst we're here. Anyone who's had a problem with child abuse or abuse in any way, but are just motivated by this problem, our website is www.sks.fyi, and that's it.
And I'll put it's into the description so you
That'd
can
be great.
you can click onto that.
Mm.
I'd love for you just to describe a bit more the work you are doing. So I'm hearing AI, so it's can you describe a bit more?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we tried to initially we looked at the whole problem holistically, because that was our first question to government, was where's the holistic plan? Because you always need a holistic plan. Doesn't it? Because you're with a problem that is a percentage of problem, a percentage of population problem. As we discussed, it's people doesn't this doesn't fit in people's heads. Everywhere, everywhere you work, live, and play, there will be a percentage of the people there that have pedophilic interests in children. It's just a fact of life, and unfortunately, people don't get this. Okay, well, there's a lot going on here. We've got past, present, and future problems. We've got online, outside, and at home problems. Believe it or not, viewers, there are family and people that are supposed to look after children that actually head towards those jobs because they want to abuse children. And maybe that won't seem like a no-brainer to a lot of folks, but that doesn't fit in a lot of people's heads. They just, I've been talking to people about this, and I've had folks walk backwards into hedges because they're just so jarred by the subject that the thinking brain just sort of locks up, and the automatic, the, the cerebellum just starts going, oh, let's get out of here now. And I've had people walking back into hedges, fences, and you can see their brain lock up. But AI is a big one for us because it's coming so quickly. It has so much potential to do good,
Mhm.
but to do bad. Unifying and authoritizing the paedophile chaser groups who are 80 to 90% are made up of abused children, and also provide up to 50% of the evidence that now convicts online child groomers.
Mm,
So not only are they a resource that we need to understand and help, um, uh, but also these guys are just keen. They're super motivated, you know. So these guys can not only do the job that they're already doing, whether you agree with their live, FaceTiming and all the rest of it or not. Um, there's other things these guys can do, and you can see these little groups popping up now. That's because the government and the institutions that are have been set up to do this are, like I said, they're not fit for purpose. They've got problems within their own systems, along with the percentage of population problem, um, and yeah, they need to be helped and brought into the system, not rejected by the system, which they currently are being, unfortunately, due to government and police sort of authorities and all the rest of it, not being open to suggestion,
mm,
and then there's also to help those guys out. We're looking at cheap tracking and internet into wet net watch technologies that are effectively just a tethering device, which the police use already. Big tethering devices, but they're very cumbersome. They're very 1990s. They don't look at what's on their computer. Um, we've got a new little bit of tech in the pipe that will tether their phone, a wiped phone, to a device which will basically track them and look at their internet history and all the rest of it, and basically confine them to like sort of home, if you like, whilst they're either going through the process of being convicted or proven innocent or whatever. And within that system, we will be encouraging the media to be tracked until conviction, rather than just publicly spread all over the internet when some of these people could potentially be innocent.
mm,
And you've got to maintain the sort of rule of law as well. You can't have sort of like all this stuff spilling out onto the streets, because nobody wants to engage with it really at the end of the day. So it's got to be, yeah, it's got to be done sensibly.
Thank you. Thank you. So you mentioned a little bit when we spoke before and in your notes about the online safety bill. Could you talk us through that about a bit? And what is it, and does it work or not?
The online uh, bill itself was just a piecemeal project where they built something that sounded like it was great and it would do great things for children, and just like the ICSA report, just ground to a sort of halt and petered out, and was an anticlimax. Pretty much like every other government policy that you will ever come across, it will get bastardized in a way that fits the end product, which is normally what the people that sort of make everything happen. Whether you believe it's an alien, a Rishi Sunak, or somebody sitting in an ivory tower, it doesn't really matter. The folks that have the power and the money, effectively, whatever that bill ends up looking like is sort of really what they wanted. With a bit of appeasement in there as well, potentially. Just to say, well, we did do that bit. We did that bit. But the online safety bill, which was supposed to protect our children, supposed to protect the vulnerable online, and all the rest of it, um, really, really didn't go anywhere. It made managers of some of the companies on some social companies in certain stratas responsible for certain things. It's like, okay, well, let's dilute this a bit more and just put it in the bin. So the digital children's digital sovereignty bill is effectively to counter that. So for us, uh, children should have their own terms and conditions that companies need to apply to, not the other way around. If you have a child that just wanders into the street, and a 5 or 6 year old that just suddenly gets the idea, oh, I'll go down the park. The back door's open. Mum's forgotten that she's just left the washing out. Child wanders off to the park. There are laws in place that if anyone gets involved with that child, and there are people, still out there in the public that will go, hang about, that kid's on its one around its own. What's going on? No, and we'll either chat to the child or we'll say, hey, Mr. Policeman, there's a child here. If you're on the internet, that's not the case. They are just completely free to roam this wild west, which effectively is their playground where they play the most at the moment, um, ad hoc. Completely untethered from the parents, with no line of sight from the parents, and they're in their bedroom. As far as mum and dad are concerned, they're safe. They're upstairs. They're safe, but they're not safe. You know.
Mm.
And so all of these bits of tech that we're working on, is really to fold round into all of these little bits and pieces that have gone wrong, that the government have instigated, that have sort of been on the periphery of everyone's sort of universe. People that aren't in the space will have heard a bit of it on the BBC or on Radio 2 or whatever. And gone, oh, okay, yeah, I know about the X report. Well, it was, yeah, we spent a lot of money on that, but they don't know that it was jammed by government right from the get-go, because there were cases in there that they admitted from it, and B, didn't want and to talk about, period, you know. And because of, like you said, because of the public school systems and the way that these folks that have come out of the system into government and into the broader, higher levels of the C-suite and boards, we've ended up in a situation where we've got people who are detached from a normal family environment. They don't understand how the normal family operates because they've been brought up by a nanny. Their kids are brought up by a nanny. They don't really have to engage with the nitty-gritty of actually bringing a family up, and just working on the in normal everyday life. Going down this town centre. But yeah. So hopefully that I've haven't wandered too far off the plot there, but
Thank you. I think that makes sense. That, the online safety bill, flawed, didn't really do anything. And then you've got this children's digital sovereignty bill as well, which
it's a petition at the moment. So if people can Google children's digital sovereignty and petition, that's all they need to do, and it should come up in their Google.
well, I'll find a link and I'll put it into the
I'll send
description.
you a link, Piers. Yeah, yeah.
That would be good. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about maybe your public school experiences and, how that was. What age did you go to boarding school?
Yeah, I went, oh, I can't remember the year, but I did look it up recently because I went to Lockers Park, and I don't know if that's okay or not, actually. So I haven't said that to mention it, but I was 8 and I went there for about 2 years, a little bit over 2 years, I think. Um, and there was one particular master there that took a liking to me, or disliking to me, I should say. And he used to, yeah, just if I did stepped out of line, I just used to get, I used to get a whack, and if I sort of looked at him funny, I'd get another whack. And if I said anything, so you just very quickly learn to shut up to
Mm.
start off with, and don't say anything. And but I'd never really encountered beat. The old man was a bit sort of absent, and we can circle round to that if we have time. But mum was sort of the cornerstone of the family. Um, so I would class myself as a mum's boy. Um, uh, and my sort of directive from the old man when we jumped out of the car for my first day at school was, "Don't cry, boy, or you'll upset your mother." So that was sort of mission one, and actually I was sort of all right with that. That was all I can. I've got something to do now. So yeah, so that was my first sort of experience. Um, uh, the first real experience that I remember, because like I was saying to you earlier, My memory is really sketchy. But my first memory is the first night in the dorms, just kids crying. I don't remember crying myself, but I'm sure I must have done. But that was the first thing. I remember this sort of like cacophony of just people crying, and then it would stop over there, then it would start over here, and it was like as this sort of stereo image of sort of
Mm.
kids crying around me, stopping and starting, and very weird. I must have cried, and I can remember the school. I can remember school better now because they've got a 3D tour. Have you ever done these things? Which
No.
school did you go to, Piers? Are you allowed to say, or did you say
Yeah, yeah. I went to Christ Hospital.
Christ Hospital? Okay.
So that's Horsham.
Awesome. This particular school's got a virtual walk around tour, so you can actually watch around. So I went to these places where I knew that this master like knocks me about, and where his office was, I used to have come down every morning down this sort of like half spiral set of stairs, and for breakfast. And I remember seeing his door. So every time I had my eyes on this door, So until I got round the corner, and I was like, okay, got away with that one today then. um, and but 2 years to sort of when I got when I met Jimmy there, who's the co-founder in SKS. Um, when I met, it sort of made it all right for me in some ways because I knew that because some of the kids there were shocking. They were Nazis. If you'd have put those guys if you put those guys in a different situation, I don't know if you've seen some of the experiments there, that where they electrocute people on one side of the wall, and you have the man in the lab coat. I can't remember what the experiment's called now, and they just keep on dialing up the pain to the person on the other side of the wall who you can't see. And most folks under a position of authority will keep going around to number 10, which they're told is fatal. Which is like I like to think that I wouldn't do that, but if I had a guy in a lab coat and a stethoscope saying, no, this is the experiment, you need to put it around to 10, and you can hear this person through a microphone. Have you heard of this experiment?
I've seen
I don't remember the
or
name of it.
heard about it. I think I've seen it on someone else doing it on TV.
Yeah, but it's 70% of Joe Public will actually go round to number 10, and that's fatal. So by the grace of God and all that, go I. I like to think that I in that position, but apparently 70% of folks will turn that knob round to number 10. And that's for somebody. That just and when I saw that statistic, I sort of started to wonder about I started to explore my own mind a little bit more.
Mm, mm,
But
mm,
my journey through school helped with that, I think, because it was quite violent. There was boxing, there was just violent, and we had knives. Similar to I saw that podcast with Charles Spencer you did,
mm,
because I've reached out to him as well. Well, basically, we're still going around like we did with yourselves. Anyone who is publishing um, uh, uh, their experiences or talking about them or working in this therapy space like you are, we're asking for permission to use your materials and ideas within the AI, um, so that we don't fall foul of any copyright issues in the future. Because I think that AI is it's going to have a copyright issue. It may just be retained to the creative arts and some very hard and fast rules, but AI is effectively scouring everyone's information off the internet now and program. These companies are programming their tech, which they're now making money out of from effectively our interactions online. Is that okay? Well, I don't care that much if I'm going to get a good tool out of it, but I'm going to care a lot if suddenly this AI is used by an abuser to get my child out of the house and into their car, you know? So we've got to go through that process of obtaining rights. That just all fits in really lovely with having conversations with people like yourself, and continuing that journey of understanding and the outside world understanding what we're up to be able to bring this whole horrible saga to a close. really, because the end game is to stop child abuse, and
Mhm.
everyone would love that. And politicians will sit there and tell you they're going to give you all the gold and treasure in the country, and will say all the right things, but you've only got to look at the results of their actions to understand that they're not doing any of what they're saying they're going to do.
Mm. Did you see about the ICSA final report? I had Alex Renton and Dino Nocivelli on my podcast about a month ago
Right.
about the latest standing, which said they put a loophole into the mandatory reporting part. So basically saying that if you see some abuse or you know about it, but you don't report it, you there's no you don't get fined, you don't
Yeah. Okay.
there's no culpability to it. Whereas a friend of mine pointed out that if you're in the financial sector and you know someone is embezzling money and you don't report it and you don't say anything, you get, I think it's 10 years in prison and an unlimited fine. And
Yeah.
yet, if you know about child abuse, so they put this loophole in, means it's still not mandatory.
Uh, that's just another example of why the ICSA report and the online safety bill it was effectively a waste of time. I mean, God knows how much the online safety bill costs to generate and publish, but uh, and this is one of the reasons again that we've got involved with the Greens, because we're trying to develop a an evolution of the petition portal into a referendum platform for the Greens, which seems like a really simple thing to do. It's not quite as easy as we first thought it might be, but from a PR perspective, and of course, MPs aren't going to want it because it's going to take their jobs away. Um, but there's no reason why we can't evolve the petition portal that they now have, which is pretty useless, and it's glacial in its operation. There's no reason we can't evolve that into uh, a near live referendum portal where big issues can be taken care of just like that by the public. It will instill a set of immediacy to the public's connection with the MPs, which will get rid of this. Well, politicians don't listen to me, because they'll have to listen to me, because they'll be getting a voting data in a near live format. And in ways that, and in ways that we're used to seeing now. We're used to looking on our phone and looking at a video, not reading reams and reams of policies. Nobody wants to do that. They just want like a 2 minute bit on what they're interested in. If I'm a trucker or I'm a mechanic, if I'm a mechanic that works in a local garage, I want to know what the average mechanic should be paid in the UK. I want to know what my rights are as a mechanic, and all the rest of it. And actually, I don't want to get involved in the political system at all. But my mate, who I know who's really good down the pub, he's really political. I used to be a mechanic with him at Ford's. I trust him. I'm going to like him. He will go on to the platform. He'll do the voting for me. Do you know what I mean? This isn't rocket science, Piers. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't take long to actually sit down. Okay, what's the problem? What's the first principles of this problem? And just start developing a train of thought beyond that. You put that up for debate, and then the majority of people like it, then you implement it. It's how things are supposed to work, but they don't, you know. So we're hopefully we're going to develop that with the Greens. That's sort of one strand that's just like on the side quest. And our core our core drive is around child protection technologies and child protection period, eradicating abuse, in all its
Mhm.
forms.
So, how do people support you, Jay? How do people, obviously, you got your website.
Yeah.
Is there a way of people either volunteering or
That's great, because we're moving on to the next topic, which is really sort of where are we, and where are we going? Well, the end destination is eradicate child abuse.
Mm.
At the moment, we've built a what we're calling a VPOP, which is a verified parent-only platform. And this is where parents will go. It's on the website, but this is where parents will go to debate what they feel should be the right age for their children to go on social messaging. When should they actually be have untethered access to the internet? Is that, that's one of our first posts. Sorry, polls, one of our first polls. Um, is it 13, 16, 18? You know, my daughter, one of my daughters is 25 now, and she's adamant that her kids aren't having a phone until they're 16. But she's not a parent yet. And we enjoyed the the privilege of being able to know exactly where our children were when they were first going to school. We had an app. That app told us exactly where they were. They're never going to let their phone go because it's attached to them 24/7. So that was a good security to us, because you know everyone is talking about dangers to children in the outside world, strange danger. It's constantly driven into you as soon as your wife gets or your partner gets pregnant. So so a lot like Professor John Haidt talks about in The Anxious Generation, we've been through this problem where we're coddling our children because we're worried about them being out in the horrible outside world, and at the same time we're giving them this device which keeps them happy, gives them the dopamine hit, but at the same time is uniquely dangerous to them, from anonymous abusers and everything that we've talked about. So I probably need the question repeating again now.
Okay, so it's just about how do people support you, and
Yeah.
you
Well,
mentioned about your website.
yeah. At the moment, and this is beautiful. We're talking is, and it's one of the first real podcasts that we're doing because it's you are sort of at the pointy edge of my first experience with child abuse. Not unfortunately, not my last. But the last one that tipped me over the edge was a friend who actually used to come to the Grand Prix sometimes with me at the end of the season, because back in the day it's 20 races now. It used to be sort of 10 and 12 races when I was doing it, and we'd have a great time. We'd sell our team kit to punters over the fence. That would pay for the holiday, and we'd go off surfing. It was brilliant. But he got convicted of online child grooming. I fell out of bed. I knew the family really well, all of the family really well, and uh, and that was the final straw for me. Jimmy sort of had his own journey, which was different. He sort of went, sort of valedictorian or whatever you call it in the States. Went through all the good universities, got good jobs, and is a bit of a wheel now in F1. I went through a sort of more bumpier journey, fell out, went to comp, flunked out of school, flunked out. I did 1 year of college, flunked out of that, and just basically bounced from job to job, getting into all sorts of trouble, really. Um, but by sort of luck, really, I ended up going to a race at Silverstone, and I ended up getting a job in Formula One, like I said at the beginning, sort of as a truckie stroke mechanic stroke gluer upper of broken bits, and slowly sort of worked my way through the ladder, as it were, into the DO, and then into simulation work, and then working with drivers from a human performance perspective. And actually, that's one of the, again, fortunately, lots of serendipity in this journey of ours, really, and including yourself, meeting you. Really, it's weird the way it's all come together. Um, and then, God, I lost my train of thought again. I need more caffeine. I need coffee. I should have had coffee instead of tea, Piers.
Yeah, I'm just kind of starting to wrap it all together really and
Time's
just
it watch.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
quarter
quarter
past four. Blimey already.
yeah, time goes very quickly. So is there anything else that you would love to um direct or say as we start wrapping this?
Yes, yeah, for a couple of things really. Just super sensible things like don't send your kids to sleepovers unless you are so sure there's not going to be a brother in the same room, an uncle, a cousin, unless you were sort of literally in the same house, in the same room, sleepovers, it's just not worth. And I've heard so many police women and people talk about this one who don't let their kids. The kids obviously put up merry hell until they become 16. I saw this beautiful podcast of this girl who thanked her parents for not letting her have sleepovers, brought tears to my eyes. Um, who yeah, who thanked her parents at the end of it, but played Mary Hell all the way through it. And her parents were just solid on it. Well, one was a welfare worker, and the other one was a copper. So yeah, sleepovers until we've either got safeguards in place that are just like 99.9% safe, or the parent is literally in the same room. Just don't do sleepovers. You know, don't give your kid a laptop or an online device when it's at an age that it doesn't understand sexual orientation and what an abuser could be. They're all going to say, all kids are going to say to you, don't worry, mum, dad, I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, actually they don't. And until you take the time to actually sit them down and actually sort of discuss what it actually means, um, they don't, they'll just say, yeah, yeah, they'll just say, yeah, 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 whatever, until they get what they want. Because that's what kids do. They will test your boundaries every which way, until they get what they want. This is part of the problem, Piers. It's very painful for parents to say, no, well, Johnny's got, Facebook, he's only 12, and then the parents are like, well, generally speaking, most parents can only take so much battering before before, before they're ground down, and especially if it looks so inert. Well, I've got Facebook, I didn't see any. I've got Instagram. I didn't see any perverts on there, you know. Just try and pretend that you're a child, for 5 minutes. That lovely world that you used to be in of not caring about anything, just living in the moment, just wanting that thing, and will do anything to get that thing. If you can place yourself there and react in a way, a bare minimum of safety first, then have launched the conversation from there. Um, Children will get it, will slowly get it. Okay, well, mum's just thinking of my safety. That's safety first. If you just nail that home, then eventually, as they grow up, they'll get it. And if one person does that, then hopefully, the other parent that you speak to will be like that as well. And, slowly that'll change, and we'll all hopefully converge in a way that makes sense for keeping children safe, period.
Thank you, Jay. Safety first. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for coming today and
Oh, no, thank you,
speaking
mate. Thank you.
and doing this work. And, I'll put your the bill into the description and also the website name so people can go and find out more about you. So
Yeah, that'd be
thank
great. Yeah, if you're just on the periphery of this, and yeah, you've got too many trigger warnings going off in your mind already. Just sit back, and when the public version is ready, which is more anaesthetized for sort of general consumption, um, uh, uh, we'll be welcoming everyone. But it's really just for the motivators at the moment.
great, great. Well, thank you very much, Jen.
Thank you, Piers.